We're back. We are back. It is 6:30 Eastern here in the penthouse at Mudhole. And yeah, it's already been 2 weeks.
Flies by.
Flying by.
It was quick.
Yep, flying by. What did we do last time? We did fly rod builds.
We did, just kind of start to finish.
Yep.
I do a fly rod build. Applications,
Yep.
whether you're fishing for trout in one of the streams up in, the mountains or
Big stuff.
Yeah, we're going after maybe some snook, tarpon, redfish down here in Florida, or even tropical destination.
Absolutely. I think it went great. I think it went a little better than I thought it was gonna. Just because it's a fly thing. It's a little nichey, I guess is the right term. But I had a ball doing it, and I know everybody was out there asking questions and following up with that. We try to follow up in the Rod Builders Workshop there, Mudhole Lives Rod Builders Workshop.
Yep.
Hopefully everybody's joining us. So we've got live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and it's been a great group on both sides.
Absolutely.
So having a ball there working with both teams.
Yeah, YouTube's really catching on. I know guys are loving that. They can put it up on their big screen TV in the living room if the wife allows.
Well, and I think people are catching on too. Like, it's higher definition.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
so YouTube does a great job of that, and you don't have to have a Facebook account. So
Exactly.
I know a couple guys slide in there and they're like, "Hey, it's Jim. I'm using my wife's Facebook," and it's like, okay,
Exactly.
whatever. But hey, we're glad you're here. Talk about what we're doing tonight, huh, man?
So tonight's going to be a guide to guides, the ultimate guide to guides, right?
Ultimate guide.
So we're going to be talking about, well, first of all the different types of guides.
Yep.
Frame materials, ring materials.
Yep.
The different layouts, because it's evolved over the past few years. We started with a cone of flight, and since then it's really taken off, and we've got a lot more technical, a lot more technology's evolved. So.
Well, and that's a good point too, because even still to this day, people ask, well, can I use braid or on that guide or not? And it's come a long way. I think there's a lot of anglers out there, including myself. I remember when the super lines first came out, and boy, they used to tear some guides up. So the guides have come a long way. The line has even come a long way. But yeah, we'll run through it. I think you guys saw in the promo, we're going to talk about all of the CRB brand stuff.
Right.
We're going to talk about some microwave stuff from American Tackle. We're going to talk about some Fuji stuff. We're talking about roller guides. We're talking about turbos. You're going to show us how to prep some feet.
Yeah, once we got our guides, picked out, our guide set or our individual guides picked out, we got to prep those guides to make sure it's a little bit easier to wrap them on the blank, right?
Yep.
Once we got that, we need to figure out our layout on our rod. So I know you're going to be talking about static deflection.
That's it.
How to space those guides appropriately.
Yep, I'll be on the deflection board here. And then to end it, we're going to do a locking wrap and tell you why or why not you should do that. So I think everybody's ready. How do you feel about that, Jay? Do you feel like you're ready, bud? Perfect.
I think so. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission.
All right. You're back.
We are back.
That's
How about
great
that?
timing.
How about that? Cool. All right, so as we mentioned, we're back in the penthouse. We're glad everybody's back for the ultimate guide to guides. Could also be called the Big Guide Show. Either one. All right, so the demos tonight, how we're going to space out those guides. We're going to use guide tubing. We're going to prep guides. We're going to show a lock and wrap. We're going to walk over the deflection graph. We've got an announcement.
Yep.
We got a sale going on. I know that everybody keeps an eye on that clearance section. There's a lot of really, really great OEM blanks in there right now. Y'all are the first ones to know about it, and that's why we love you. Clearance section is now 50% off for blanks. So we're doing anything in that blank clearance section. We upped it to 50% off. There's a lot of great OEM blanks in there.
Yep.
That is going to run until Wednesday the 27th at midnight Eastern Standard. So you guys know about it a little sooner than everybody else, and then it'll run all day tomorrow until midnight Eastern. And then, of course, that is while supplies last, because those clearance blanks do go quickly because they're pretty awesome, and you cannot beat that price.
You got
50% off. So.
And, of course, we got the giveaways, as always.
Always.
We got 3 prizes to give away tonight.
Yep.
And we'll get to those here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we're going to have to get your credit card out.
As always.
As always.
That balance it's getting up there.
Telling you, you're doing a heck of a job of keeping up with it, though. We applaud you for that, for sure. All right, so what are we going to do first, Jay? You want to slide that up? Let's have a look at, we got the Jay and Nick in here with us, always doing the 1s and 2s, doing all that. So look, we need to talk about frame types.
We do.
Before we get into this, we're going to do frame types, we're going to do ring types. Take it away.
So let's start from the very beginning, right? So,
yes.
Of course, we have, for spinning guides, we've got our standard, well, it's actually in one of these kits right now.
Yep.
We've got our standard V-frame spinning guide, right?
Yep.
And of course, we have our double foot casting guide. We have our turbo guides, for the saltwater use.
Yep.
We also have roller guides with the roller, hence the name, right? For saltwater use. And then in between, you have, your running guides that you can use, which typically go with size 5. Fly guides is what we typically call them.
Yep,
right?
that's what they were originally.
It's kind of a misleading term, right? Because it's just a small single foot, guide that is very close to the blank, not particularly used for a fly rod, necessarily.
Right.
But it can be used for casting, spinning rods for sure.
Yeah, well, I think we call it just a single foot runner.
Or a single foot runner. Yeah.
But they did. They originally were called a single foot fly guide.
Right.
So.
And of course, there's a ton of different materials too. Mainly the 2 that we generally use is stainless steel, right? And then of course titanium. If you really want to, get your wallet out, get that credit card out, and spend a little bit of money.
Absolutely.
But the properties allow you to, especially in saltwater, titanium guides will not rust. So therefore, you don't have to worry about spraying your guides off every time, or rusting, corroding. That goes out the window.
Well, and of course, for a lot of heavy use, that REC. Has made a guide that they call Recoil. So the Recoil guide is a titanium and a nickel alloy together that allows a lot of transmission from line to the blank, sensitive. It's very light. And of course, with that alloy, you can actually mash those guides and they stand back up.
Yep.
So, for guides, whether it's charter captain or guides that maybe guys that treat their gear a little tougher than some, you can step on that guide. You're not going to lose a ceramic insert, and it's going to stand right back up.
Yep. And there's also different coatings that these manufacturers have come out with.
Right.
Fuji has their corrosion control. American Tackle's got their Tion, Tion.
Right.
These are basically, they allow to use a stainless steel frame, but with this coating that they use over top of the stainless, you get the same type of properties as titanium without the heavy price tag.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, and we even talked about rings before we went to the intro there, because you see a lot of different rings from something that has oxide at the end of it. You see aluminum oxide, and then you start to see zirconium stuff. You start to see you have an SIC guide from Fuji, which is a very famous guide ring that's been around for a long time. Of course, then you have a nanolite from American Tackle. You've got a Duralite from them as well. All of those guides, I would really say now, getting back to that super line, they're going to be braid proof. Right. They're really going to be braid proof. There's a couple that you have to be careful if you're using a wire trolling line. That's an SIN, so that's a silicone nitride. Fuji makes a great turbo style guide for that if you're using a wire line. But that's really, outside of a wire line, you can use anything from a CRB standard guide all the way to the most expensive stuff. You can use fluorocarbon, braid, monofilament. It really doesn't matter anymore. So between the advancements and coatings on the lines themselves, as well as the ceramic ring, you can really use pretty much anything. Now, yes, as price increases, the rings do get better. They do get a little bit harder of a ring. They dissipate heat a little bit better. And then, of course, they get thinner, which to me, the thinner is going to translate to a lighter guide. You know, you can certainly use titanium to lighten up, but, you know, if you had a titanium frame with a giant thick ring in it, you're not going to see the differences you would if you had a titanium frame either with no ring, like an REC, or a titanium with something like the thin SIC ring there from Fuji. So that's just kind of a, you know, a lot of years of development down into 10 minutes. So I know we
could go on for hours.
Yeah, we really could, you know, and of course we're going to answer plenty of questions for those that are following along on YouTube. Throw some questions in there. Taylor and Guffey are in the war room. They're going to provide links there for products and links, resources, any of that stuff. And then, of course, we're going to answer as many questions as we can here live. We got those coming in. And for those that put them in there earlier and the ones that run them up live right now. So
one thing I do want to talk about is, so there are certain guides that do not have ceramic rings.
Right.
Right? So an example of this would be the CRB SSR guides, which have, it's basically a metal insert ring, I guess you could say. It's actually swaged in between the main frame of the guide.
Double
swaged.
That's key.
Double swaged, which allows, the frame basically encapsulates the ring on both sides instead of one side, right?
Right.
So it really locks that ring in there. And, you know, these guides are great. And of course, the first question everybody asks is, well, do they groove? Do they hurt my line? You know, is there any problems there? We haven't seen any issues since these have been released.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, a stainless steel frame, they come in a number of different colors and with the stainless steel ring in them for the ultimate and lightweight.
And affordability. I mean, you can get
it's hard to beat that.
You can get a set for, you know, less than $10, easy.
Yeah, and of course, because they have no ceramic ring in them, they're extremely light. I mean, I know, you know, Greg and some of the guys here have built some ultralights with them.
Right.
We have an inshore rod built on there, and you know, we purposely, you know, I had to take a step back and just let it go to the rack without rinsing it off because I am a stickler about my gear. But you know, we've been lucky to have those, tested them in salt, tested them in fresh, and purposely tried to abuse those, and they've been passing with flying colors. So,
yeah.
You know, for lightweight, for durability, and all that stuff, that SSR is a great guide.
It is, absolutely.
You know? Then, of course, those come in a regular and then a
tall frame.
And then a tall frame.
Which leads us to, let's do this little right quick, and then we'll do some questions.
Perfect.
So, guide layouts, right? So, yes. Of course, we go back to Kona Flight. That was one of the first ones that was ever really, you know, brought to the rod market, I guess you could say.
Right.
So essentially a Kona Flight is you start with, let's say, a size 30.
Yep.
You go to a 25, you go to a 20, 16, and so forth.
Sure.
You're just decreasing one size ring, you know, as you go down the rod.
Right, absolutely.
And
I think you want to illustrate this?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, as Hunter was saying, we'll take it over to the board here as he talks. We got to use all the toys, right? All right, so we're talking about Kona Flight, right? So we got a rod blank, and then we have our guides. So, you know, we'll do our reel seat and a little fighting butt here or whatever. So you're talking like a 30.
Yeah, we'll do a pretty large size. Say we're doing like a spinning rod. So
Yep.
you got a 30. And we'll go next guide a little bit smaller, 25, a little bit smaller, 20. So as you can see, it's creating that cone effect
Yep.
all the way down to your tip.
So we're doing like this. This is where the Kona Flight comes from, right?
Yep.
So we'll do 30, 25. Hopefully that's a good 5 there, because I know I've been 20, and so on.
Yep.
So that is where the Kona Flight comes from, because it's just a gradual, like you said, right?
Yep. So once that, and that's been around for, gosh, who knows how long, since rods came to be, you know?
And this still, you know, you still see this.
It's still, oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with saltwater rods, surf rods especially, you know, you
Yep.
still see this type of layout on a ton of rods, even built to this day.
Right.
So I would say the next biggest, you know, advancement in guide layouts would probably be the concept system. You know, and even that one's been around for, you know, several years, which basically it's the ultimate achievement here is to get that line or to use the smallest possible, or in some people's cases, they don't want to go to the smallest possible guide,
Sure.
but they want to go to a small guide, right?
Yep.
As fast as possible.
Okay.
So say let's start with a 30, and instead of going to a 25, let's go to maybe a 20. And then after that, maybe you can do a 16 or a 12.
Yep, get it
So
down here
you're
real
essentially
quick.
you're skipping a few sizes in there, and it's more of a, instead of a gradual, it's more of a drastic drawdown.
Yep.
And then once you get past maybe your third or fourth guide, you're almost to your, let's say the running guide, which can be, a 6, a 5, whatever size you
Yep.
choose.
So that would be like a, depending on where you're at here, this would be a choke guide, right?
Yep.
Cool. I'm a rod builder, not a spelling teacher.
So what that allows you to do is, for one, you're getting a lot of weight off the tip. You're not using those bigger ring guides that weigh more.
Yeah.
Because
Because what we talked about it the other day, I think like a 7 or an 8 weighs double what a 5 weighs.
Exactly.
So,
So you get a lot of weight off your tip. That's going to be more sensitivity. It's not going to hinder the action as much. You get
Right.
all those great benefits, right?
yep.
So the next one that came along would be, I would say, probably the KR concept from Fuji.
Sure.
Right? So essentially it's another step down, you're
Yeah.
going for. Not only have they introduced high frames, which, essentially you can go from like, now you can do a 25 or a 20.
Yeah, I think on mine, and that one back there it's a 20 high,
Yeah.
and then it's a 12 high, and then it's like a 6 low.
Yep.
So you go high, high, low.
At your third guide, you're already almost on the blank and ready to run the rest of your runner
Like
guides out.
5s or something,
Yeah.
right?
And so for you guys at home that aren't familiar with a high frame guide, essentially we'll say a size 20 high has the height of, we'll say, maybe a 30,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the ring is still, a 20.
Yeah, so the edge of the ring away from the blank is going to be, for example, if this was a 30, the 20 would be like this. Well, that's not. These are not to scale. So that would be a 20, but the heights,
And the height is really important,
Off the rod
especially
blank.
especially on spinning rods. The height is crucial because you have that reel that's hanging. Obviously, if you're holding in your hand, it's going
Right.
to hang down off the reel seat quite a bit.
For sure.
So, and even at an angle, you still need to. You can't just go from your spinning reel down to a size 5 guide to the blank, right? It's just too drastic.
Right.
So, what the KR allows you to do is keep the same height as a taller, say, 25 or 30, but decrease the ring size.
Right.
So now, like you said, you can go from a 20 high to a 12 high to a 6 medium or low, whatever
Yep.
it may be, and all of a sudden you're
And
down.
then you're to your runners.
You're good to
if
go.
you want 6s or 5s or whatever like that.
Yep.
So, cool. And of course, this being, you had mentioned KR, but also the microwave.
Yeah, I was going to say
system.
that would be the next one. Around the same time, the microwaves.
Yep.
So the microwaves allow you, it's a 2-ring guide as your stripping guide. So your first guide has 2 rings.
Yep.
Which of course now they have tons of variations, including casting and surf and etc. But the first one that was introduced was a 2-ring. It was I believe a 20 and a 6.
I believe. Yep.
So again, it allows you to get that line tamed faster and down to a smaller ring as fast as possible.
Yeah. And that, this first one where it has the 20 outer and the 6 on the inside, that would be very similar to what we're talking about a high frame, because that frame does stand, considerably higher up off the blank. And the great thing about the microwave system is because it is very specialized and because it has a high and it is a very rapid reduction going from, and don't quote me on this, but, the 20 down to maybe the 12 or a 10, and then down to a choke guide that's right on the blank. It might be a 6, but it is a low guide. Doing that, it's very similar. And they give you the spacing, because when you start to get into these high frame stuff, and I'll show you on the deflection chart, when you start getting into the high frame stuff, not only is your guide spacing important coming from the tip, it's very important coming from your reel out to here, because that right there and the height of the guide, there's a lot that goes on here. And of course, you know, Fuji does a good job of explaining it. There's actually a mathematical formula. I just cite it, and I'll show you guys how to do that rather than doing math. But yeah, that's one of the really important parts, and one of the things about the microwave that's so great is they actually give you spacing out from the reel and then spacing coming in from the tip, and you kind of meet in the middle and get it all dialed in. Yep. So that's a very unique and way to do it. I like that. I like coming out from the reel, coming in like that, dialing it in. So.
Yep, that's a great way to do it. All right.
What do you think?
I think that's good. Hit some questions and
yeah, let's get some questions and give something away.
All right, let's see.
I'll do the first one.
Go for
How
it.
do you determine the guide size to line size? That's David Masterson. David, a couple things. I'm gonna choose the guide size. We'll call it on a spinning. We'll call it spinning first. I'll do both. So the guide size is going to be based on the size of the reel I'm using. So for me in saltwater, I use a lot, 2500 size, 3000 size, like a Stratic from Shimano. So I'm going to start with a size 20 in a Fuji high frame, or a size 25 in an LZR, or the microwave, you know, that starts with a 20. So I'm going to start with that. It's going to run it down, and I run out to either 5s or 6s. Where that comes into play is how big of a leader we're talking about. So if you're using 15-pound braid and you're only going to use, you know, like I tie an Alberto knot, which is a very slim knot. A lot of people also, what's the one that Scroggins ties it? It's the one that's like the alternating
FG?
and the FG knot. Scroggins ties the FG knot, and I know a lot of guys out there tie very, very slim. So you can drop down a little bit. You can go to those 5s or so with normal size leader that's very close to your braid pound test size. So if you're running 15-pound braid to maybe up to 20-pound leader and you tie a small knot, 5s are great. As you start to increase, and let's say you're snook fishing and you go to like 30-pound, those knots start to get bigger. That's where you need to start thinking about guide size. So you just need to make sure they pass knots. For casting, you know, it's the same way, but you also need to have the guide based off of, you know, the blank power too. You know, you don't want to have a super extra heavy blank with some like kind of dinky little single foot guides because they can't handle the pressure of, you know, with the guides being on top and the line pressing down on them. I mean, you know, we do use 65-pound braid for a flipping blank on an FP 936 or FP 937 with single foot runner guides and size 4s. So they can handle the diameter. It just depends on what you're doing with it and, you know, what kind of knots you got.
Yep.
So,
cool. Eric Larson, can you use microwave guides with other guides? So I would say most of the microwave guides are actually sold in sets. So you really don't even have to come up with your own, you know, layout or design or, you know, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And they also give you the spacing, which, like you said earlier, they give you the
in.
first 3 measurements from the reel,
Yep.
and they give you the measurements from the tip, and you just kind of fill in where needed.
Yep.
So, Eric, unless you really want to experiment, come up with some kind of crazy Frankenstein, you know, layout, I would just buy one of the sets. You know, depending, of course, they have casting, and like I said, they got surf. They've got the microwave 30s, which are great for like tarpon and heavy snook rods.
Yep.
They've got it for almost every
They
application.
have ones without a ceramic ring in them.
Right.
So they got them in a number of different materials. I don't know why you'd want to kind of mess with that system, and they got them for everything. So I would just roll with that. If you do, like you said, if you do just buy a wild hair, want to get involved with changing some stuff up, for a spinning example, you got to keep the first 3 though.
Yep, absolutely.
Because that's the most important. You know, if you want to do something different with runners, for whatever reason, maybe you don't want the ceramic ring or something, but then you would just use the airwaves. Mm-hmm. But if you want to get crazy with it, keep the first 3 because that real rapid reduction deal, that's the magic.
Yep.
So don't monkey with that.
Good point.
So, yeah. What you got? Tom,
yeah.
Tom, what is the distance between the reel face and the first guide, and how would it change with the length of the rear grip. You want to hand me that red rod back there? It's got some high frames on it.
This one?
So this kind of comes into some of this high frame stuff, and I'll show you kind of why. So this is a guide layout that I did for one of the guys here at the shop, and in a quick explanation, you want to take the reel that you're going to be using. I actually have the bail here and the roller right in the middle of where we're at. So let me turn it here a little. Am I coming to you, Nick? All right, perfect. So if you notice, the line is leaving the center of the reel, okay? The way that it was, told by me, or to me, I should say, is, you can actually take this spool off and tie the line directly to the center of the spindle, I guess is what's in the center of that reel.
Sure.
Then it comes out, you want it to come out perfectly because you're trying to match the angle of this face. So this is a Daiwa BG, a Shimano Stratic is a little different, a Fluger Medalist or whatever else you got is a little bit different. So that's why when you're doing something with very, very specific guides, you want to get this reel. So it comes right out of the center, and as we work out here, we want it to come through either the center of this guide or a little down, okay? Then what we want it to do is we want it to work its way out and do the same. So we're kind of here, we're in the center, we're a little different, a little off a tiny bit there. As we come out here, now we're down in the very bottom of this choke guide, but if you were to carry it up to the blank, you would see right there is a straight line. So it intersects right here, but you want it to shoot through the guides. Now some people do say they want the line here down in the rim, or they want it in the center. Either one, I'm not going to get in a fight over that. So, but what you don't want is you don't want this first guide with the line way up here, and then this guide with the line way down here, and then this one up here. You want it to fire right through here because you're actually matching the angle of this spool face. So back to your question, Tom, how this spacing changes, especially with this first guide. As this reel comes forward, this guide is going to have to go away from this reel to maintain this. Now, for the BG, for the Stratic, the magic number here is from this spool face, it's 19 5/8 to the edge of this ring. Ask me how I know. So from that spool right here in the center, just set your tape measure right on the rim, come out here, it's 19 5/8 to right there. And for my Stratic and even this for this BG, it nails it every time. I don't remember these out here, but I got them written down somewhere. So, but you can fill it in throughout. Then you run out here to your low, and then the runners are out. So that's how it would change. I don't know this handle length here, but it doesn't matter if this handle length is way out here. This first guide is going to be 19 5/8 from that spool face moving out. That is for a high frame 20 Fuji. So, and those are actually the corrosion controls. Those are pretty sweet with an alkanite in them. So
sure.
You would do the same if, and I'll show you on the board, you'd do the same if this was a CRB LZR guide here. You know, that's how I lay them out. So that's why it would change as you move it out.
Cool.
Cool.
Richard Stewart, what does KR stand for? I'm not sure, to be honest. Do you happen to know? I'm assuming something reduction, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the for the K, because it is a K guide.
K guides.
I don't know.
Ron, my
Probably should
question.
know that.
Yeah, we really should. My question on a. He's got a 9-foot fly rod. I heard you put 10 guides on it. Is it 10 guides plus the tip, or is it 10 guides? Wait, is it 9 guides plus the tip, or is it 10 guides plus the tip? So when somebody says a 10 guide layout, it's going to be 10 guides plus the tip. You never include the tip in the actual guide layout.
Correct. And the standard for a fly rod, we told it last time, it's the length of the rod plus 1 guide. So you got an 8-footer, it's 8 guides plus 1, so you got 9 guides plus the tip top. So, and coming in from the booth, we've got Concept Revolution is the KR.
Wow.
Concept with a K, Revolution.
That's misspelled, but okay. I don't
Well,
know
you
about that one, but
I don't know. Hopefully that's right. Jay, that better be right.
I hope
'cause,
that's right.
You know,
Google's.
Google
yeah.
said so.
Okay, well, gotta believe the internet. So
That's it.
let's see what else we got here.
It might be the best line we've ever had here. I hope it's rolling.
All right, looking to build a 14 or a 12 to a 14 foot ultralight for center pin steel head. What do you recommend for low friction rings? Oh, Grant, that's a great question. There are a ton of options. I would, if you're looking for the lowest friction rings, I would go with something like probably the CRB LZRs.
Yeah.
You know, very low friction, lightweight, all the good stuff that you need. You know, Fuji SICs, really great option.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many great guide rings available. It's hard to really pick a bad one.
For the little to zero that I know about center pin fishing, steelhead fishing, some of the center pin rods I've seen, I believe they look like a modified fly rod where they have almost like a, you know, they start with some spinning guides. There may be a high guide because that reel is, you know, the center pin reel is kind of awkward.
Yeah.
Well, to me, I mean, I just don't use it. But so I've seen some of the guys use some of the recoils. Reason being is some of those guys that catch steelhead, it's less than ideal conditions.
Gotcha.
So there are actually some recoil ice guides that are very specific to the ice fishing when that temperature gets way, way, way down there. It can handle it. And of course, the great thing about a recoil guide is you can reach out and pop the ice out of a guide, and you don't have to worry about hurting your ceramic, or, you know, you can flex it. It's, you know, some of those guys, they're hardcore, man. You know, they're wading or they're, you know, walking stream side, and it's, you know, if you happen to, you know, slip and fall or something, you could bust a guide pretty quick, but I think the recoils would, you know, might be pretty good. Hopefully, you know, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong there on the, what you call it, the recoils or whatever, how you fish the center pin, but I think it might be not a bad idea.
Yeah, good option.
Cool. All right, you want to give something away?
Yeah, let's do it.
Why don't you get that credit card out? Hunter?
Let's see what we got. Where's my third place giveaway?
Third place giveaway is a CRB guide kit.
So that goes, obviously, our package guide kits. You can get standard, performance, elite, even LZR.
LZRs. That's
4 options there.
That's anyone.
Yeah.
So go ahead and give
Let's
that away.
see. All right, third place, CRB guide kit. Michael Collier.
Michael Collier from Facebook. Nice.
Congratulations, Michael.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Robert Murray, one quick one left here. I touched on it a little bit. Is there any issues with knots getting through micro guides, braid to fluoro knots? Micro guides, if we're talking below a 5, which is what I consider a micro guide, like a 4, you better tie an FG or an Alberto to get, you know, 10-pound braid to some like 10-pound or 12-pound fluoro, and it better be right, because those size 4s are tight. I know your dad has used some of those 4.5s. That can even be pushing it.
Yeah.
But just make sure that you're tying an FG, an Alberto knot, some tiny, tiny stuff. And yes, you can absolutely do it. We use size 5s all the time.
Yep.
I'm talking all of them. The LZR's got 5s in them. You know, those kits we use on that rod you saw there with the corrosion control Fujis, those were 5 runners out. And we use 10 or 15 pound braid up to about 15 pound fluorocarbon, but most of the time we're using like from 8 to 12. So 5s are great. I just never really see a huge reason to go to 4s. That's just me. But
yeah.
Hey, what do I know? All right,
All right, you want to jump on the next one?
let's do it.
Let's do it.
Demo
All right.
to proper guide spacing.
So, oh, that's easy. There it is. It's done.
There it is.
But no, let's be honest here. Most of these kits, including CRB, we have obviously American Tackle with their microwave guides, Fuji guide kits that we do here, and you know we provide spacing for all of these.
Yep.
So you can buy these kits. Not only are the sizes picked out, you can choose between different colors, different rod lengths, whatever it may be, spin, cast. The work's done for you, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're starting out building this can be one of the hardest processes, is choosing the right guides,
For sure.
sizing especially, right?
sure.
So if you're just starting out, definitely pick up some of these guide sets, and like we'll show in just a few minutes, the spacing on the back, and for this guide set, it's recommended, right? Suggested.
There you go. Suggested. That is the key word.
Suggested. But you can also, tweak it though, because there are different reel sizes, there are different handle lengths like you described earlier. Everything varies. There's not one rod for everything. So it's
Right.
going to be a little different, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you had a spinning rod and you bought a 7-foot turnkey kit from us and you only did the spacing on the back of the card, is it going to fish? Oh yeah. Is it going to be good? Oh yeah. Is it going to be perfect? It depends. But you can make it better. You can make it better than the back of the card, and we're going to show you why. But don't feel left out if you just follow the back of the card.
Yeah.
Don't feel left out.
So once you have your guide set picked out, ship it out to you, get it, right? One thing you have to have, not have to have, but it's very helpful in laying these guides out on the rod, getting the proper spacing, being able to move these guides when you need to. Tape works, right? But the guide tubing is crucial. It really helps with this process. And so we sell it in 4 different sizes. It's called GT, or guide tubing.
Yep.
And what you'll get when you get the little package in is it's going to be rolled up inside of there, and you're going to get a long piece.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like, what do you usually refer to it as?
It's an air hose from like a
Fish tank, almost,
yeah, or a bubbler, something
Yeah.
to keep bait alive. Very similar.
So when you get this long section, you're going to be like, what do I do with this, right?
Yeah. It's a lifetime supply.
It
pretty much,
really
by the
is.
way.
You might as well just go in and buy the 4 sizes, buy one of each. They're a couple bucks a piece,
Yep.
and you will have this for a long time.
Yeah, I typically tell people it's like with some of the stuff that you'll probably lose it
Yeah.
before you use all of it. So that's the key.
So what we do, if I can get a zoom here real quick, Nick, we go in and cut these little tiny, wish I had something to hold it, but these small little donut-shaped pieces, just like that.
Yeah.
So you can go in, you can do this with a pair of scissors, you can do it with a razor blade, whatever you need to. I don't think we're gonna be able to zoom in. Maybe? Yeah, 1 second.
Cool.
Let me clear some area here.
Show us some of that Top Chef Hunter.
Yeah. So I got my razor blade. All right, perfect. And all you're going to do is go in, and you can vary the the width on these pieces. If you have a large turbo guide, you can do a larger piece.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to go in. I'm going to cut these little donut shapes just like that. And once we have these, I've got a piece of blank here, for example. All you have to do is go in and slide these over the end from the top to the bottom. Get it on there. Slide it down. Just like that. Now, here is our tip for the guide tubing. Once you have these, and I say these because I always do at least, I've got 3 here for this one, but I always do 1 extra per guide. I slide these, down, right? So let's just imagine we go in. Let's do it this way. So that's essentially how your guide tubing works. You just slide the guide foot underneath, and it affixes it to your rod blank. So what Chris is going to show you in a minute, if you do need to move this guide or just take it off, it's simple, easy. There's no worrying with masking tape. And I always like to put that guide tubing a little closer to the edge of this side of the foot than the back. Because if you put it towards the back, it's going to pop up the front of that guide foot, right? And then you can't really wrap over it.
Right.
So if you do it a little bit towards this edge, where your thread actually goes up, it's going to keep it pinned down and actually makes it a little easier to wrap too.
Absolutely.
Now, the reason I'm going to do a couple extra here is accidents happen, right?
Oh yeah.
So there is a chance that, especially once you get past this guide, if you've already wrapped it, once you get up into the maybe the tip section, if it so happens that your guide might get maybe the wrap comes undone or something bad happens, you can simply just, take that guide off or take the wrap off. You can slide another guide band up there, and you're good to go.
Yeah, because once you've got them all on there, if you do a static deflection like I'm going to show you here in a minute, you got 11 other guides, 9 other guides up here.
You can't bring another one down.
You can't bring another one down.
Nope.
And that's just, I think we've all had that happen when we're trying to learn how to do these. And of course, you also have the micros.
Yeah.
The micro guide bands. So essentially, you got 5 sizes now.
Yep.
So from GT0 to GT3, so 4 sizes, and then the micros.
There you go.
You got everything covered from, and those stretch a lot.
They do.
I mean, is this a?
This is the largest size. I think this is 3.
That's a 3?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's not even close to what it'll get to. So you can use, a vast array of blank diameters.
Yep.
So.
Yep, and you can also, as long as you're using the appropriate size, you can actually test cast with these on there.
Yep.
Make sure they are tight to the blank and there's no wiggle room in there.
Yep. Or if you got to use 2 donuts.
Yeah, you can use 2. That's a great time to use 2 to make sure they're extra secure on there. But you can, don't go out there and try to throw, a football field. But you can definitely use these to practice with.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So let's talk about static deflection. Because as you mentioned, we've got guide spacing on the back of this guy. It's on the back, or it's in the package with the American Tackle stuff. Now the key there, the American Tackle stuff, the microwaves in particular, I would follow what they've got. Now, if you notice that the line's not running directly through the center, maybe tweak it just a little bit. But those are pretty dialed in. You might need to adjust the runners though, because the runners are going to, account for something that's maybe a moderate fast or an extra fast, and they're very different. So, all right, I'm going to come back over to the board.
Okay.
We're going to talk about static deflection. I'm going to talk about it in action really quickly before I show you on the board. So what we were saying about the guide spacing and why you got to cut us a little bit of slack, and everybody that provides guide spacing, is, let's say that we have a rod, that's maybe a mod fast, and then you have a blank that's extra fast, or if you want to call that fast. So if you're putting this on the deflection board, or if you're putting it in a spine finder, you'll notice that maybe like in here is kind of your apex, right? And here is your apex for this blank. So this is going to be a real key point here. Definitely a guide needs to be here, and definitely a guide needs to be here, right? So that's possibly going to be a tweak for any guide spacing right out of the gate. Or if you don't have guide spacing, a guide's going to go there, period. It does not matter which one. So if we want to break it down and you have some spinning guides and you don't know which one, and you want to do a rapid reduction, and you have a 20, 12, 6, and you want it to get down here to the blank and then run it out, I would do the first one, the second one, the third one. I put one out here, kind of that at where it rolls over, right in the middle, and then I would make this part look good, and then I'd fill in these. And then static deflect it, make sure you don't have any real sharp angles. And when I talk about sharp angles on a blank, if you have a blank like this and you have a guide, let's say you have a guide here and you have a guide here, like this, which would be wrong. Your line to here is out, right? Technically, once you get past the apex, you could put fewer guides here than back here. It looks a little silly, But you could technically do that, because if you ever have seen a rod flexed over, the last little bit of it is perfectly straight. So this is what I mean by a sharp angle. Yeah, that's exactly. That one, I nailed it, right? So that's a sharp angle, right? This angle and this angle is a sharp angle. Whereas like if you worked one in here, it would work that curve a little bit better. So that is why or that's how you would do, spacing on a spinning rod if you had no spacing. Now, the same with going with spacing. If you've got one that's an XF and you have one that's a moderate fast, when we provide spacing for you, we got to hit it somewhere in the middle. So that's where this static deflection is going to be. You might have to move some guides out here. You might have to move some guides here on a moderate fast, but 7-foot medium heavy spinning rod or 7-foot light spinning rod, we can get you pretty dialed in. But if you got one that's super extra fast, you're going to have to bunch those guides up in the tip a little bit because you're going to have very little flex back here in an extra fast, and it's all going to fall out here. Whereas on a moderate fast, it's just going to be a nice, it's just going to roll right over. So let me show you on static deflection.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know we've talked a lot about spinning rods this show. And I do, once you're done with that, want to talk a little bit about casting rods.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got one good point to make on those, but go ahead.
Perfect. All right. So we'll start at this end first. Hopefully we can see this. Again, I've got the same reel in here, and I've got the line roller so that it's right in line with the center axis of this reel. So this line is going to come out, and I'll pull it tight like right here. So the line's going to come out. It's going to shoot through the center or a little to the low side of this. These are CRB Elite guides. So they're not true high frames, but they are higher frames. So they're a concept. So it's going to come off the center of the reel in the middle or lower section of that guide. This one is going to do the same. Whoop. And of course, I've got guide tubing on here, so I can just move that or push it. Come through there, shoot through. I got this one a little low, so we can adjust that because this spacing I have on this CRB blank is right off the back of that card. So it's good here, or maybe a little here. Probably need to come out this way a little bit. This one is actually pretty good. And then, of course, you're going to get out here to your runners and you're going to come out. Now, guide tubing all throughout here. You notice on this one stripper guide, because this foot is a little bit larger, and to keep it steady, there's 2 bands on there. So I've got GT1 on here for guide tubing. I got 2 bands there. I got a band here. I worked out to these runners before I dropped down to the GT0. So for something like this, this is an IS blank out of the Color Series, CRB. It's a 7-foot, so it's an IS 701L. So GT1 and GT0 would be great for this. And again, these are the CRB Elites. So we run them through. Now, of course, I didn't run extra guide tubing in here. So naturally, something will probably happen. But so run it through, and then I am always sure I do go ahead and use the tip-top cement, the hot melt glue on my tip-top. The reason I do that is just because the tip-top kind of takes a little bit of a brunt of this when you're flexing this rod over, and I want to make sure that it's on the spine, it's not going to turn on me, but that's kind of how you use the deflection graph, right? So we're going to flex this over, and you don't want to take and hoop this rod way up under itself. You can actually start to come down here a little bit. We try not to get past a 90. So, if we were on a 90, we're about there. You can see this rod blank is a little bit on the moderate fast to fast side. It's not fast and it's not completely moderate fast. It's a little in between because you can see kind of the tip top wants to come over here a little bit. But as I was saying earlier, we're kind of in the middle of the flex here, so we got a guide here. We come over. This guide could probably come back a little bit because you see there's a little bit more of an angle here than there is right here. So we could probably bring this guide back a little, and all we have to do is grab it and slide it back. That, just a little. And of course, I'm doing this kind of one-handed. You would tie this off, but you can see the line here is now straight, as I was mentioning. So that's a small angle, little. This is kind of straight here. You can see kind of moderate fast. And if you need to adjust anything, this is where you do it. Pull it over. You can actually, let the flex out, slide this one back a little. You could probably slide this one back a little. test it out again. And again, none of these guides are wrapped. They're all on here with the guide tubing. GT, I didn't use any of the micro because the tip top on this blank is a 5.0. So there's some good sized tip there left, so I didn't have to drop down to the micros yet. So that's pretty much how you do that. There's your static deflection. That's where you dial it in. That's where you cross off any problems. Make sure your angles are very, very minimal. But that's it. That's your static deflection. I mean, it's the same with the casting. Obviously, you just have to be careful that your line doesn't touch the blank. And that's a main difference with going from spinning to casting. But I know a lot of the newer builders, I should say, sometimes they might start with a spinning rod. I know a lot of our early classes were all spinning. But that's kind of the introductory of the static deflection.
Yeah. And the deflection tool, along with the graph itself,
yes,
it makes it so easy to allow you to static deflect,
right,
because your rod is, well, you can do two if you really wanted to, what you have up there.
Yeah, I got another one
You
back
can
here.
compare two side by side, but it also allows you to be somewhat hands-free. You're not having to hold the rod and deflect it and try to move a guide. It's there, it's stationary, and
right,
you can just deflect the tip. Easy as that.
Exactly. I mean, granted, I was doing it there, but like you said, you can tie it to a full milk jug down here. You can take and put a ring on the end or a hook, and tie off a loop down there on the floor.
Yep.
Like I said, you do not need to take and hoop that rod blank way over. You just don't need to do it. Really don't get beyond 90. And when I mean 90 is from this plane here, coming down this direction. You can see these marks here where we talk about different actions and powers on the blank. Don't get beyond these 90-degree marks. So from there to there, you don't need to pull it up under itself because you'll damage any rod blank. That's how you hurt it, and you don't need to do that. So.
Yep. Cool.
I think, aren't we going to give one of these away? We're going to give one of these away?
I think so. Might be the grand prize. We'll see. I don't know.
I like it. Cool. We've got some questions. Let's do some questions. Slide us back up there, Mr. J.
What do we got?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a good one, actually. So, William, is it best to do guides from reel to tip or tip to reel? So, most of your guide spacing that you'll see will be from tip down toward the butt.
Yes.
With the exception, there are a few.
Yep.
The microwave guides, they do give you the spacing for the first 3 guides from the butt, but they also give it from the tip, like you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So that allows you to, basically fill in the gap between the two, right? I'm trying to think. The guide sets that we provide from Fuji, those are from the tip.
Yep.
But I believe the GPS software that they have on their website, Angler's Resource.
Yep.
I want to say
They do.
they do it from tip, or is it from both?
Well, because you're entering in a number of different things, I still think they're doing it from the tip, but it's based
on the spool?
Yeah, it's based on the spool size, it's based on guide size, things like that. So you're actually not going the other direction because you're entering in all of that information.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're just doing it there and we're like freehanding it, we're coming out from the spool because we're just getting that measurement, boom, done.
Yeah.
We don't have a computer program that's doing that conversion for us.
Yeah.
So.
And the reason behind doing it from the tip is because the handle lengths vary so much.
Yeah.
And there's just no way to account for all.
No,
the lengths,
you just can't. And that's where you get kind of in a pinch if you start sliding that handle length. If you want a shorter handle or you're going to use it for a topwater rod and you're working the topwater and you don't want a long handle, or if that rod's going to live in a rod holder, you want a little bit longer handle. So, and then of course I forgot to mention, all of these measurements are to the ring.
Yes.
So if you're from the tip down to the first ring, down to the second ring, because if you were to measure here on this guide, you've got the ring is out here, okay? The ring's out here, the foot's way back here. there can be a lot of difference there depending on how big of a guide you're running. I mean, if you're running, turbos or rollers, or this is just a 20. I mean, what if you had a 50? There's a huge difference. In a double footer, you don't know which one to go to, always go to the ring.
Yep.
Always go to the ring.
Same for a double foot too. Always go to the ring. Right. Don't go to the back of the guide foot, the front of the guide foot, go to the ring.
Yeah, because if we've got a rod over there that's got like a 40 kW guide on it, and there's like 4 inches of span between the feet. Like yep. you could really booger up some guide spacing real quick. So I'll do Diana's. Should the tip top size match the last running guide? It should. Or what I do is sometimes, depending on which model tip top I want, I go a half size larger typically, really for no other reason that it's just a little insurance, and it might make no sense, to some people, but I would rather go just a hair larger than just a hair smaller, but technically you could do, if you had a 4.5 runner from Fuji, I would go to a 5 if there's not a 4.5 ring in the tip top, because not all tip tops come in all of the sizes, because there's 4.5s, there's 5.5s, there's a little bit there. I would stick to whatever the final couple runners are, or the final runner, or I would go a half size larger if there's a weird half size there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How is the difference in quality between microwave and Fuji Torzite? The price is a big difference. So my answer to that would be Torzite is obviously it's a very, very nice ring. It's very slim, it's lightweight.
Yep.
Does really, really good braided line, no damage or nothing there. It's almost in a class of its own. There are a couple competitors,
Yep.
but it's a really, really good ring.
Yep. And then, of course, typically they come with a titanium frame.
Yes.
So you're also working with...
They're only available in titanium.
Okay, right.
So, yeah, it's a very expensive guide.
Yeah, so you're already there. You're already higher than that. Now, granted, the microwaves do come with... They do have some titanium, but you're dealing with a titanium frame with the Torzite. And, of course, that Torzite ring is really the thinnest. And on their tip tops, like some of those Arowana tip tops, they have the F-top, where the ring actually, it's almost like it's swaged like the SSR.
Yep.
So the ring is on the outside of the frame. So if you get sharp angles on your line will never, ever, ever touch the metal frame. Never, ever. So there's a lot of technology that goes into that Torzite guide, and that's why you see a huge difference.
Yeah. The point I would make with that is a Fuji Torzite necessarily better in every application as a microwave? No, it's not. You can put together a $200, $300 guide set with a Fuji Torzites.
Real quick.
Is that necessarily going to be better than a microwave guide train in certain applications? No, yeah. I don't think so.
Or is it necessary to go to that
exactly.
level? We have fought all kinds of fish in all kinds of different settings and all kind of line classes with a microwave nanolite, a CRB LZR guide, with a Fuji KR alkanite ring. We've done all that in a bunch of different classes, and they all did a great job. But yeah, there's, it's one of those the Lamborghini's still going to get you from point A to point B. It's a little flashier, and it's pretty sporty. So
yep.
you're gonna pay for that. But is the microwave going to do it? It absolutely will, and it'll do it incredibly well. So that's kind of our long and short of that.
Yep. So. Do one more and then maybe go on to the next one. How much deflection do you put in the rod to determine sharp line angles? So as Chris showed, you definitely never want to go past 90.
Right.
But you want to be right in that probably 90, almost 90 range.
Yep.
Almost, imagine that you're fighting a fish. You've got your rod, we'll say, just normal setup right in front of you, and that rod is bending over.
Yep.
Right? It's not bending all the way over back onto the boat, and it's not bending straight up or pointing straight up.
Right.
It's got a nice deflection. It's bent over almost towards the water or kind of out into the distant a little bit.
Yeah.
That's going to give you your best deflection.
Absolutely. And of course, here on the board, I'll show you real quick, just deflecting one over. When you have a blank that is a little bit more moderate, could be moderate fast, could be fast, it's going to take you a little bit more travel to get it to go to 90. So see, I'm off the chart now and I'm down just at 90, right? If I had one of those Mag XF MHX blanks that are extra fast, we could get like this really quick. I mean, I can't even really make that blank do that, but if you had one come over real quick, you could get to 90 real fast. So it all depends on your action, but definitely you don't need to go past 90. Even when you're fighting a fish, you should try not to go past 90. Yep. I know it's not always a perfect world, but that's what we say. Cool.
All right, what do you think? Another giveaway?
Yeah, let's give something away. Scroll down there, Mr. J.
So what do we got? We got a choice of CRB Performance Guide Assortment Kit, which there's a few options available there.
Yes, and that is something that every builder, repair man or woman, anybody should have around, because that's just a great option. It's something that somebody brings you a rod, they need to get back up on the water, like right quick, they're ready to pay, they want it fixed, you got the kit, you're ready to rock, It will match, it's very close to a lot of guides. Unfortunately, we get this question a lot, before I give this one away. We get this question a lot, what if you don't have a guide that will match? Because there's a lot of OEM guides that come on major brands of fishing rods that we physically can't get. They don't make them for the aftermarket. You can buy American Tackle, you can buy Fuji, and of course a lot of factory-built rods from the major manufacturers have American Tackle, or they have Fuji, or something like that, or they have Pac Bay.
Yep.
We can get all those, that's great, but what happens if you can't get any of them? So it's good to have an assortment on there, and that assortment winner for the CRB Performance Guide Kit is coming out of YouTube, and that is SGT Rock. So from YouTube, SGT Rock, congratulations. CRB Performance Guide Kit.
Cool.
It's great to have on hand.
Yeah, I think we got those in spinning or casting.
Yep.
Of course, you can pick what color you want. Black
or polish?
Yep.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, so let's run back up there to the questions while we're getting ready for the next deal. So you're going to show us, we've got our spacing, or we've got our guides picked out. Let's walk through it again. We got the guides we want. We got them. We did our static deflection. We did our spacing. We got our stuff dialed in. We made our final marks, all that stuff. Now, keep in mind, we're using the old trusty China mark on this, because sometimes you want to make a mark, then you put your guides on, then you take it to the board, then you make another mark. Don't forget, if you've moved something, to make another mark, because we all know that things happen, and you might lose a guide band. You might lose a guide, you might test cast outside, come back in, and you go, man, that guide spacing is perfect, and you forgot to make that final mark, and now it's frustrating. So make sure you make that final mark. Sometimes, if you want to make one mark, the initial mark in white, you want to make the last final mark in red, or vice versa. We got 3 colors of these bad boys, depending on what color blank you're using. But please set that mark after you're done moving, because the China marker rubs off fairly easily. When you move those things up and down, you can wipe that mark off, and then, like I said, if you lose it, it's gone forever, so be sure to mark it. So now we're ready to rock. Make sure those guide feet are prepped.
Yep.
So tell us about that.
And you can either do this before you do your layout, or you can do it after, as long as you got your marks made. Don't start pulling those guides off.
That's what I said, don't pull them off.
So, guide prep for the feet. And this is easier with some guides than it is with others.
Yes.
Most guides from the factory or from the manufacturers, they come prepped to an extent. Yep. Some better than others, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you get these larger, roller guides or heavier saltwater guides, double foot guides. Mm-hmm. They're going to be, we'll say, a little bit blunt on the edges. They're not going to be completely finished off.
Well, remember, it's just the gauge of the metal there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's just
absolutely.
a whole lot more frame going on than with a size 4. So.
Yep, I know it's a little bit hard to see there, but I'm sure you guys, if you built a few rods, you've seen where, you know, the edge doesn't quite go down towards the blank. It just kind of goes and then stops, and that's your blunt edge. And that makes it really tough to wrap up that guide foot.
Absolutely.
And this, you know, it's not only for, you know, saltwater guides or heavier gauge guides. It can be even some like smaller spinning guides, running guides. It happens.
Yep, even fly guides.
So the couple of things to keep on hand is obviously sandpaper. Sandpaper comes in handy not only for guide prep, but also for sanding your grips, any little touch-up work you need. So you can go in, especially if it's a smaller, I don't really have one in front of me, but if it was a smaller, oh, perfect. Little smaller running guide, maybe it's a 4 or a 5, and all you need to do is just barely go in and touch up that guide foot to kind of smooth it down. Sometimes they'll have little rough edges. That makes it easy as well.
Yep.
Or you can come in with, you know, a guide file, whether it's specifically for guides or if you just happen to have it in your garage. Any type of little small file will work. Same deal, you can go in, you know, hit your guide foot, smooth it out. Really what you're looking for is a ramp from your guide foot to the blank.
Yep.
And that just makes it so easy when you start your thread wrap, you're going up. When it hits that edge, it just wants to track right up the guide foot. It makes it so easy, right?
Absolutely.
And then of course, I know you've got an even better tool down there. If you want to, do you want to show that off? Or?
Yeah, why not? So, I think you guys know on this show we like power tools.
Yep.
I'm a big power tool guy. So, I guess it would be a pro tip, a Penthouse pro tip. So, always when you're working with power tools, we'll do safety first, and then teamwork. So, we've got the cordless Dremel here. I've got a corded one at home. We've got the fancy cordless one here, and probably the best $30 to $60 that you could spend in rod building. It's awesome. Now, another thing that I use is this one's got a rope on it because I'll put it around my neck in the stream when we're fly fishing. These are locking forceps. They're pretty inexpensive because the last thing I want to do is get this size 5 while I'm holding it next to a blade that's spinning at no telling, right? So I actually will grab the foot. Don't grab this ring because you will crush it. Grab the foot here and lock it. I don't know if you guys could hear that at home, but you can grab it and you can lock it. So now you can hold it however you see fit, and I've got it in here. Sorry, Nick, I'm jumping around, man. My apologies. So I got it locked in here, and I still have, you can see here, I still have pretty good room there on the foot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up the old Dremel. You can turn this thing up, run it pretty wide open, and then we're just going to, just like that. You need to get the underside of the foot. Just duck her underneath there, but you can work that just like that. Turn her off. Boom. You ready to rock? You go to your next one. Lock your next one in. You're ready to go.
Perfect.
So there it is. Penthouse pro tip.
Awesome. Yeah, that tool, I mean, not only in rod building, just everyday stuff around the house.
Anything.
That's a great thing to have.
Yep. And of course, I'm using just the, it's like a cut-off disc, I think they call it, a cut-off wheel. You know, they kind of comes with a little toolbox. So it's got like a little sandpaper wheel in there. It's got like a grinding stone if you want to use a grinding stone. You know, so it's got a couple different options depending on what you're using. The wheel always seems to do a pretty good job for me. And especially on those little ones, you're not having to put in a lot of work. You're just turning over that edge a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Let's see.
I'll do Chet's.
Okay.
Because we see Chet in here a lot. Good customer, good viewer. What's the best way to remove an old guide and clean the blank for a new guide? So Hunter has showed the way to remove a guide a few times on previous shows. So here's the blank. Here's a razor blade. And we actually like to heat this a little bit sometimes, depending on how much finish is here. and then we lay the razor blade on top of the guide foot. We use the guide foot as a guard to the graphite because you don't want to dig in there, and you scrape up the guide foot like that, and what that does is it just shaves the finish and the thread off of there, and then you can actually just work that guide right off. Pull that off, and then it'll leave a little groove, and you can actually take your fingernail and just peel that thread back. If you're going back with, you know, the same thread, the same finish, everything, you're probably going to have a little bit of finish on the blank, but more than likely you're going to cover that up. So you'll probably never know, even if you go right back in the same place. If not, though, it can get a little tricky. You know, you can try to use some alcohol to get that off. You can use a burnishing tool to try to kind of work some of that off after you've soaked it in alcohol. If your blank has like a metallic finish or a custom paint job or something, be very careful using acetone, because the last thing you want to do is start wiping that beautiful paint job off that blank. So maybe do a little test spot, maybe use a tiny little Q-tip where that foot was and rub it, and okay, it's not going to pull the paint off, then kind of wipe it. If all else fails, use a very, very high grit sandpaper and tape off where you don't want to sand. Put it in your RBS Pro and just barely touch it with some, I mean, ultra, ultra high grit. It'll knock some of that down. So there's a couple different ways to kind of clean it. It depends on how clean you need it.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of times where I've replaced a guide and I really didn't have to do a whole lot of cleaning because thread goes right over it, finish goes on top of it, and we just move on with life.
There you go.
That's when it's good.
Cool.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to do Shane's question.
I'm going to get my part of this whole deal
Perfect.
together. Let me give you
Shane,
this
Shane's question is, would love to hear recommendations on stripper guide sizes for bass and inshore species like redfish for the CRB 701 MH. He's fishing with a Corrado 200 reel and number 5 running guides. So Shane, I would recommend, and hopefully Chris backs me up on this, because I think this is our layout for every bass rod we have, maybe except for our flipping sticks.
As long as it's not an ACSM reel seat, we're good. We're good.
We typically use either a double foot 7 or 6, usually a 6,
Yep.
to size 5 running guides. And that's it.
That's it.
And that goes for, like I said, every single bass rod I have except for my flipping sticks, because we use all micros or maybe a 5 runner to 4s.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, this would be great for your inshore too. Like I said, a 7 double foot or a 6.
Yep.
And then to size 5 running guides.
Yep.
It works perfect.
Perfect. Now, here's an asterisk, because I forgot that I did this until I did one of the rod recipes.
Okay.
That hopefully everybody seemed to like. I enjoyed doing them because it gave me a chance to revisit some of the builds that I went way back on. So this happened on the SWB 956. It's a swim bait rod.
Okay.
Throws an A-rig. Taylor calls it a chandelier. He was throwing it, and because that rod can throw a huge swim bait, a lot of our, you know, California residents throwing those big giant swim baits, some of the time they're using a round reel. So, you know, the Corrado is a low profile reel. So let's talk about those two, because there is a low profile casting reel that you see typically on bass stuff, sits lower to the blank, you can palm it. Then you have something like an Ambassador style, which is a round reel, because the side plates are actually round. So that would be an Ambassador 6500, a 5500C, you know, some of the stuff from like my childhood type deal. Then they stepped it up, and Shimano went to the Calcutta. Calcutta is a great inshore, but it's also a round reel. Yep. It stands a little higher off the blank. The only reason that I wouldn't go 6 double foot to 5s is if maybe on that medium heavy, or maybe you're throwing a heavy or even something more, but I still want to use the 5s. I might go to an 8,
Yep.
or depending on, you know, if you're throwing like a musky type deal, maybe even go to a 10. So then work it down a little bit, because that round reel is going to stand taller, and it'll just give you a better angle. Whereas, you know, if that reel gets too high and then you have a really short guide, you're going to work a sharper angle.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about those angles, just like we talked there. So with a Corrado 200, perfect. 6s to a 6 to 5s or a 7, 6, 5s, perfect. But if you go to that like Calcutta, I think they call it like a 400. Go to a Calcutta 400, you might want to watch that height. You go to one of those Ambassador 6500s, they have more of that old school line guide that's not even a ring, it's 2 bars, stands a little taller. You might want a little bit better angle.
Yep.
So, perfect.
Yep.
All right, so that's what we would do. All right, are there any more questions there that we're not getting? Maybe slide down a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
So,
yeah, do we see anything? Ron, I'll get you real quick. Discuss guide alignment tips. Ron, I know I talked about static deflection. I know I talked about bands and all that stuff. I know it's probably making it harder on me, but it makes it easier in the end. If I do a static deflection, it's important when I put those guide in, that mark, because I pull all those guides off that rod. And I do each guide, I wrap it, and I sight it. Then I wrap, I do the next one. It's much easier for me to sight them and do one at a time and keep everything in, rather than having 11 guides all just all over the place, and then you're trying to like, well, does that, okay, that, and you're trying to count them, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 1, 2, 3, and they're all just out of whack. So that's my tip for that.
I'm going to answer one more real quick, because this is actually a very good question. Can you scroll up real quick, Jay? Just a little bit? I just want to get his name. Oh, there it is, Jack. Jack Waters. Would you discuss tip-top nomenclature? I have trouble getting the correct size. So, Jack, a tip-top is measured in 2 different sizes, and they're actually measured in 2 different measurements.
Yeah, to make it easy.
Right?
Yeah.
So, say we have a 6-4 or a 6-4.5, right? So the first number is going to be the ring size, which is measured in millimeters, just like our guides, right? So if,
always.
Yes. If I've got, let's say, size 5 running guides, I would typically use a size 5 ring tip top to match it. You don't always have to, and I know you hit on that a little bit earlier.
Yep.
But that's just kind of the run-of-the-mill standard way of doing it, is to match the tip top ring size with the last running guide on your rod blank.
Yep.
The second size of a tip top is the tube size. And I don't have one to show you guys, but the tube is what goes on the end of your rod blank, right?
Yep.
That is measured in 64ths of an inch. So a 4.5 is 4.5 64ths of an inch.
Yeah.
I don't
See how
know
easy that is?
who come up with that system, but
Yeah.
wow.
Well, I think it goes back to gauge, because, and maybe, the guy that came up with it, he and I would be great friends, because cigars are measured the same way.
Gotcha.
So they're done in a ring gauge that are in 64ths of an inch. So it's a 50 up to a 64. So a 64 ring gauge would be an inch.
Yeah.
So maybe it was that guy. I need to find that guy, because
You guys would click.
we'd be buds. We'd be buds. All right.
What you got for us?
I hear some rain coming. We're getting close to 8 o'clock. So, it is summer here in Florida, because we have 2 seasons. Maybe not even 2. All right. Real quick, let's talk about a locking wrap. I'm always honest with y'all. And there's some things that I do, and there's some things I don't do. I did used to use locking wraps on flipping rods and some other stuff. When I was first getting into rod building years ago, I thought it was necessary and all that. And then I just haven't had a guide pull out from under the thread wrap when I stopped using locking wraps. So I was using them, and I was like, yeah, I've never had a guide pull out. That's great. And then I was like, well, let me see what happens if I don't use them. And I use them under the same conditions. And I still haven't ever had one pull out. So I'm going to say that under some circumstances, a locking wrap is needed. I don't use it, but I'm going to show you how to do it. How about that?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to show you on a much larger guide than you would typically do it on, just for the viewers at home. That's the only reason. So using some bright orange, so it's a good background on the blue shirt and the blue blank here. Go Gators. And so we're wrapping them, right? Now we're also going to talk about cutting this guide band, because remember, Hunter showed us and told us about this guide band. Now you got to figure out how to get this thing off of here without messing up everything. So what we're going to do is just like when you cut off the thread wrap, you're going to do the same on this guy, and we're going to cut it just like that. Use the guide foot as your backstop, and you won't cut your blank.
And cut away from the thread.
And cut away from the thread. You saw that. Cut away from the thread. All right. So I'm going to do this real quick. I don't want to hear any comments from the peanut gallery about packing thread and doing all that. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap all the way to where the guide turns upright. Right? So here's where it goes up. Now, I understand that this is a little bit harder. Hang on. Nick, I'm going to turn to you, bud, so we can see it at like more of a 90. Hang on, let me get out from behind that tension rod. Stand by. Stand by. All right, that's better, right? Perfect. Okay. So we're going to wrap to where the upright starts. And again, the angle of this guide doesn't make it super easy for this, but just so you guys can see how it works, typically you would do it on one of these guys here, like that is really hard to see, so it's really hard to hold, and you would go around, and that's how we do it. So what we're going to do, though, don't forget to do this, because I have forgotten to do this a few times. What you want to do is before you make your final wraps up this way, you're going to want to lay in your loop, right? So the loop that you tie out, I'm just going to use some orange thread here. Some of y'all use a little pull-through string and whatever. So we're gonna keep wrapping, and now we're at the upright, or right here, kind of close to it. Let me get another one. Okay. So what's going to happen is we're going to stop wrapping on this side of the guide, and we're going to do one behind it. So we got to go behind it, right? I'm going to leave this out so you can see it. All right. See how I'm back here now, right? And we snug this up. And you got your little burnisting tool guy. We're going to snug this up. And again, I know it's not super packed tight, but I'm just trying to make sure we show you guys. So I went behind one time. I don't know if that's extremely necessary or not. I've just always done it. I go behind once. Okay? And as we go to come around again, you want to go behind again. So now we're behind again, right? And this is where we take the thread, and the tension rod comes in great. We're behind, and we go around, and I'm going to try to do this so y'all can see at home. Come around like this and down. Did everybody catch that? So I'm going to do that again. So here I'm behind the guide, right? Come up to the guide, we go behind it, and then we go around it, and then we're tight. Okay? So do that once, and you can see here where it's wrapped. Okay? Going to go again. We're going to do one more. So we're here, right? Keep it tight, and go around, and come down like this. Now, again, you probably wouldn't do it with this big of a guide, but that's how you do it. We stack everything in, we cut it, and off we go. But you can see, I'm going to spread these out again. You can see how that guide's making a wrap, right? So there's your wrap on that guide. It's going to lock it in. Then you pack everything nice and tight. And then what you'll do is you'll cut it, and you'll just pull it off. And remember, these all have to be burnished and tight. But because this guide is so large, it wants to spread those wraps out. So hopefully you guys understand that. Again, come behind it, come around it like that, and pull it down. You can snug it up like that and go around, right? What you don't want to do is you don't want to do this. So you're in front, and you come around this way, and when you come like this, it'll want to cross here, and it'll create a gap. It'll probably be okay, but it's always created like a weird, funny gap here. So I come behind, come over the top, and then I can pull it down and lay it right there, right? Behind, over the top, snug it down. So that's way more times than I think you need to do that. Typically we do that twice. Always, always, always remember to put your loop in before you start going behind that guide. Make sure you get 2 or 3 wraps over that loop before you start doing that locking wrap, and you're ready to rock.
Cool.
So,
And where this really shines is with micro guides, yeah? Anything from a 4, down to like even the nano micro guides, the 2s, because you're really just not working with as much thread, not as much finish, where those guides can pop out sometimes.
Yep. Hang on. I'll finish it, Robert. Stand by. Roger. So cut it. I know I'm blocking here. Sorry. So there we go. Cut it. Pull it through. We're going to tighten everything up. I know the suspense is killing y'all. It's killing me. Got a little thunder maybe tonight?
Looking good.
Yeah, not too bad. I need to get a new razor blade is what I need to do. The larger like Y in this kind of holds it apart a little bit. When you run it on a tiny guide, it is a little more compact, a little bit tighter. So, but that's it. So that's kind of how it looks. Backside, it still locks down, still comes tight, just like anything else. But up here, you can just barely see these two little locks right here, where you come in, go around it, then that. So that's it. There it is.
Nicely done.
The locker, the old forehand locking.
What do you think? You want to hit a couple quick questions and then?
Yeah. Hit a couple quick questions.
Giveaway?
Last giveaway. We'll let everybody go.
Let's see what we got here. What we got? Chris Lackey. How do you keep the fuzziness from size A thread from coming through the finish? Chris, before you actually apply the finish, I would go in with like an alcohol burner, and I would just lightly flame that thread. Usually that's going to knock off any kind of fuzzies or, when you do make your loop and you finish that thread off, if you don't cut it quite close enough, that can create a little fuzzy. If you just barely flame, don't get all the way up on the thread wrap. Stay back just a little bit and just lightly flame that thread. Usually all those little fuzzies will just burn off. And you're good to go.
Or buy this 100 box of CRB razor blades. You can see this is the box of razor blades we keep behind here. There is no reason not to use sharp razor blades all the time. You can see what happened. I had been, cutting at a guide and doing this, no telling how old that razor blade is. That's really not what you want to do. Try to change your razor blades out. Dispose of them safely, please. And that's it. Jay, could you scroll up just a little bit, bud? I want to hit that big announcement. Go up. Yep. All right, so before everybody gets out of here, we got a big announcement. We are planning on reopening the showroom. You guys haven't seen some of the cool new stuff down there. Reopening the showroom June 1st. Now, we will be maintaining state, county, mandated social distancing, but we're going to reopen that showroom. We got the sport fisherman down there. It's got the tower on it. It's got the outriggers out. We got some new mounts in there. We got a marlin jumping. We got a hammerhead down there. We got some really, really cool stuff. George and the sales team down there has done an excellent job. That showroom is ready to rock. the displays, all the product. We've got AFCO clothing, we've got AFCO gaffs, we've got all the products that you can buy, on the website, through the catalog. We've got kits and handle kits and blanks, and if you want to walk in and flex a MHX blank, we got it. We'll go get anything out of the back for you want. So, come by and see the showroom. Again, reopening the showroom here at Mud Hole June 1st. So, while maintaining the social distancing.
Yeah.
So, that's big.
Cool.
All right. Give away the big grand prize.
The grand prize. And of course, we hit on it earlier. It is the... We're going to get a pan shot of this real quick, or probably not. No. The deflection graph and
That's
the
it.
deflection tool.
That's it.
It holds 2 rod blanks or 2 rods.
Yep.
Several great reasons to own that thing, not just for static deflection, but also for comparing rod blanks and rods.
Absolutely. All right.
Grand prize.
Out of Facebook, Johnson Marine.
Johnson Marine.
The tool and chart combo, the deflection from CRB, goes to Johnson Marine and Facebook. Congratulations that. And just to go through the winners again, we got Michael Collier out of Facebook is the 3rd place winner. That's the CRB guide kit. You get to choose Standard Performance Elite or LZR in spinning or casting in black or polished. And then, of course, out of YouTube, we got SGT Rock wins that CRB Performance kit. So that's the deal there. And then, of course, grand prize, Hunter's going shopping tonight before he gets out of here. Johnson Marine wins that deflection tool and chart combo. So,
don't forget, big sale that we just announced earlier.
Yep.
To you guys.
Y'all are the first ones to know about it.
The clearance section is 50% off, and that ends tomorrow night, Wednesday the 27th.
A lot of people like those OEM blanks that are in there. I would check those out. Get them in a hurry. Clearance blanks, 50% off. And it doesn't take too many of those blanks to get to that $49 free shipping. Remember, free shipping on anything over $49, that's retail, that's wholesale. And we got a lot of stuff in there. Anything 8 foot and under, over $49. As everybody knows, hopefully, if you don't know about it, you're missing out. You need to get there to the Mud Hole Live Rod Builders Workshop on Facebook. I understand if you don't have a Facebook account. I understand that. But it is a great community. No telling how many are there. We probably got 6,000, 7,000 now.
Yep.
It is a great community, and we appreciate everybody that's in there. So that's it. We appreciate everybody, all the customers asking questions, everybody watching. We don't know what the next show is going to be, but we love leaving it up to y'all. Give us some suggestions. We've got a few ideas, but, give us some suggestions. What do you think? What else?
I think that's it.
Is that it?
Come see us next week.
That's it?
Monday. So.
Yeah, the 1st.
First is Monday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, need to get a calendar. All right.
That's all I got.
Perfect. All right. So for Guffey and Taylor in the war room, Jay and Nick in here with us, Hunter McCamey as always with me behind the rod building bench here in the penthouse. We're going to go eat some pizza. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks as always.